Welcome back to Reddit Bedtime Stories. As the day draws to a close and the shadows lengthen, there is no better time to pause and immerse ourselves in the complexities of human relationships. Tonight, we have a tale of love, expectations, and the heavy burden of an unstated truth. It is a reminder that sometimes the happiest moments in life are overshadowed by the things we choose to keep silent. Settle in, breathe deeply, and allow yourself to be carried away by Elara's story. The sky above the hills was a soft palette of lavender and orange, the perfect backdrop for what should have been an unforgettable evening. For Elara and Lucas, whose love had burned for 4 years like a strong, constant flame, this moment felt like a destination. They stood on the edge of a cliff, where the ocean whispered gently against the rocks, the exact spot where they had shared their first kiss. Lucas, with his usual charm and a nervous flicker in his eyes, smiled as he reached out to take Elara's hand. His touch was familiar, the embodiment of all the comfort and security she had found in their relationship. She had felt a subtle undercurrent of excitement for the past few days, an anticipation sweeter than the salty sea air. This was it. The ring, the question, the beginning of their forever. She looked at him, the man she loved unconditionally, the man who was her best friend, her anchor, her future. And yet, at that absolute peak of happiness and promise, a cold, hard truth knotted in her core. It was a truth she had tried to deny with every fiber of her being, a scream of doubt she had stifled for too long, but which was now so loud it drowned out the sound of the waves. Lucas knelt, his face illuminated by the setting sun, a small velvet box in his hand. His eyes were pure, filled with hope and unconditional love. "Elara," he began, his voice trembling slightly, "you are my everything. Will you marry me?" The world seemed to stop. The air grew thick, and the colors faded. Elara's heart, which a moment earlier had been soaring with joy, constricted. It was the moment of her life, but her answer was not a triumphant yes. Her voice, soft yet firm, cut through the silence like a shard of glass. "Lucas, I can't." The light in Lucas's eyes turned to confusion, and then to deep, stinging disbelief. The box nearly slipped from his shaking hand. The perfect sunset, the perfect gesture, everything lay shattered. The reason for her refusal was not a lack of love, but a secret she had carried for years, a fundamental difference in their vision of the future that she had never dared to discuss. The fear of losing him had silenced her. Now that silence had pushed their relationship into the abyss. It was a harsh lesson in the dark side of silence, and the beginning of a painful, unavoidable confrontation. Elara and Lucas had a relationship that, to outsiders, seemed the very definition of perfection. They were two strong, independent souls who found each other at a crossroads in their lives and decided to walk forward together. Lucas was an architect, as orderly and logical in his thinking as he was in his designs. He loved stability, structures, planning the future with the precision of a blueprint. Elara, a freelance graphic designer, was the artistic, free-spirited counterpoint. She embraced spontaneity and saw life as a canvas that changed daily. Their differences were initially their charm. Lucas brought calm to Elara's chaos. Elara brought color to Lucas's organized world. She laughed at his lists, and he smiled at her. No plan is a plan mentality. But as the years passed and their relationship transitioned from infatuation into serious, mature love, those differences began to manifest in fundamental life questions. Lucas had always made it clear that his ultimate dream was a family, a house in the suburbs, a dog, and above all, children. 3, he imagined, laughing as he cuddled Elara on the couch. 1 for sports, 1 for art, and 1 to save the world. For Lucas, parenthood was not just an option. It was the undisputed, logical next step of love. It was the cornerstone of the forever he wanted to build with her. Elara knew this. She knew it from their 3rd date, when he casually mentioned the names of his future children. She knew it when they moved in together to an apartment with an extra room, which he cheekily called the nursery. But what Lucas did not know, and what Elara fearfully concealed, was her own truth. Elara did not want children. Ever. Her decision was not taken lightly. It was not a phase or a temporary reluctance. It was a deep, fundamental understanding of her own identity and her place in the world. She valued her independence too much, was too attached to her freedom and her career, and simply did not feel that relentless biological drive towards motherhood that women often spoke of. To her, the idea of a life without children was not empty. It was complete. She had tried to tell him. She had rehearsed the sentence countless times in the mirror. Lucas, I don't think I want children. But every time the moment arose, the fear choked her. The fear that that one sentence would cause the entire structure of their happiness to collapse. Lucas's face, full of hope and unconditional love, was a shield that kept her mouth shut. She rationalized that it might still change. She told herself there was still time. She pretended, and the silence grew into an impenetrable wall between them. Now, on the cliff, with his look of devastation that cut deeper than any anger, the wall had collapsed, and Elara stood exposed in the ruins of her own deception. What? What do you mean you can't? Lucas's voice was a strained whisper. He stood up awkwardly, the ring box still in his hand. Is there someone else? Did I do something wrong? Elara felt the sting of tears, but she had to be calm and clear now. She had done this to him. She owed him the full, unvarnished truth. No, Lucas, of course not. You did nothing wrong. You are the best man I have ever known. This is not about our love, she said, gently placing a hand on his arm. This is about our future, and how it fundamentally looks different for both of us. She took a deep breath. The words felt heavy in her mouth. I can't marry you because I can't give you the future you truly want. Lucas, I don't want children. The silence that followed was deafening. The waves, the wind. Everything seemed to fall quiet. Lucas stared at her, his eyes wide and disbelieving. It took a long, agonizing minute for the information to seem to penetrate his mind. What are you saying? He shook his head, a confused smile on his face as if she were making a bad joke. This is absurd. Elara, you knew I wanted kids. We have always talked about this. You always nodded. You talked to me about names, about raising them. You led me to believe that this was what we wanted. His confusion morphed into painful realization, and then into a flame of anger. How could you hide this from me for so long? How could you let me live in the delusion for 4 years? Let me dream of a life with you, including a family, knowing that you didn't want to share that with me. The accusation, though harsh, was entirely correct. Elara felt the shame and sorrow overwhelm her. I know, and I am so sorry, Lucas. I was a coward. I was afraid of losing you. I thought the love would be strong enough to overcome it, or that I might change my mind. But it didn't happen. It's a part of who I am. I want a life filled with travel, career, independence. I don't feel that drive. and I cannot marry you and hope that one day you agree to give up your greatest dream, or make you feel like you have to convince me." "You wasted my time," Lucas said, his voice low and dangerous. "4 years of my life. You fed me a lie for 4 years about the most fundamental decision in a human life. This is not a small difference, Elara. This is the core of what a relationship is. You have given me an impossible choice. You, and giving up my dream of becoming a father, or my dream, and giving up the woman I love." He turned away and looked out at the ocean. It was a look of loss, of a man whose entire, carefully planned future had gone up in smoke. Why now? Why wait until the moment of the proposal? Why turn this perfect moment into a catastrophe? "Because I wanted to give you the choice before it was too late," she answered, her voice breaking. "A marriage is a commitment, Lucas. I couldn't promise you forever, knowing there was an insoluble conflict at its core. It would have been unfair to say, yes, start a marriage, and then a few years from now come to the realization that one of us felt unhappy or unfulfilled. I didn't want us to go through the pain of a divorce. I did this out of love and respect for you, no matter how painful it feels right now." Her explanation, though logical in her own twisted ethics, could not take away Lucas's pain. Respect? There is no respect in 4 years of deceit, Elara. The time to discuss this was when we first got serious. Not now. He held out his hand and let the ring box with the glittering ring inside drop onto the rough rock. The sound was soft, but it felt like a gunshot. "I have to get out of here." And with those words, Lucas turned and walked away. He left her alone on the cliff with the setting sun, the ring, and the absolute emptiness of an irrevocable break. The love was still there, undisputed, but the shared future had been destroyed by a lack of courage and an excess of fear. The days following the incident were a torment of silence and reflection. Lucas had left the apartment and moved in with a friend. Their communication was limited to brief businesslike messages about logistics and dividing possessions. The shared space, once filled with the laughter and warmth of their life, was now a cold, echoing reminder of what they had lost. Elara's circle of friends reacted with a mix of confusion and slight condemnation. They were a couple goal, and the news of the rejection hit like a bomb. She had confided only in her best friend, who confronted her at a city cafe. "Elara, you are my best friend, and I love you," her friend began. "But what you did, it was unfair. You should have said it much sooner. You knew he was investing his time and energy into a relationship that had a clear goal for him, a family. By staying silent, you deprived him of the chance to find someone who shares those same goals." Elara nodded, every sentence from her friend feeling like a deserved blow. "I know," Elara whispered. "I tried to explain it. I said I didn't know, that I thought I would change my mind, that I was trying to put it off. But the truth is, I was afraid. I was too selfish to let him go, even though I knew I would hurt him in the long run. I wanted the relationship, and I wanted the man. I hoped he would give up his dream for me. It was the most selfish act of my life." "But were you truly so certain, Elara?" her friend asked, leaning in. "Or was there a small, fearful part of you that thought you might wake up one day and regret your childlessness and resent him for it? Isn't it true that you wanted to shift the responsibility for that uncertainty onto him?" The question struck Elara at the heart of her internal conflict. It was an uncomfortable truth. Yes, her decision was firm, but the world around her kept telling her she would still change her mind. The societal pressure on women to become mothers was a constant, nagging voice. By remaining silent, by waiting until the last moment, she had shifted some of the blame for the breakup onto Lucas. He didn't understand me, instead of, I wasn't honest with him. She knew she couldn't ask Lucas to give up his life's dream. That would be pure tyranny. His desire to be a father was just as fundamental and legitimate as her desire to remain childless. It was a conflict of two perfectly legitimate but incompatible desires. The moral dilemma was twofold: the silence as betrayal. Was it morally reprehensible to waste 4 years of someone's life by hiding a fundamental yet unstated truth? The consensus and her own gnawing conscience said yes. It was a form of deceit, not of the act, but of the intention. The truth at the altar. Was the rejection at the moment of the proposal, though cruel and painful, the most honest act? Yes, it was cruel, but it was also the last chance to spare him a greater, later sorrow. She had found the strength at the critical moment to end their love for the sake of his and her own future integrity. Lucas's pain was palpable, even at a distance. Elara received an email from him a week after the breakup. It was short and to the point. Elara, I picked up the ring. I'm ready to officially move out of the apartment. I'm thinking of going to stay with my brother abroad for a while. I need to think and gain distance. I loved you with all my heart, but you robbed me of the chance to choose for myself at a time when I still had time. I will probably never forgive you for this. Lucas. The sentence, I will probably never forgive you for this, was a cold shower. She had hoped for anger, for sadness, but never forgive definitively closed the door. It confirmed the magnitude of the wound her silence had inflicted. Elara realized that her fear of losing him had brought her exactly to the place she dreaded. By trying to cling to a relationship doomed to fail because of the unstated truth, she had ended the relationship in the most dramatic, painful way possible. She began to review the fundamental differences in their personalities, differences that perhaps made the break even more inevitable than just the desire for children. Lucas was a planner. He needed a schedule. Elara was a now person. She lived in the moment. Their shared future had always been a construct of Elara adapting to Lucas's structural dreams, with the subtle hope that he would change, or that she would magically transform into the woman he needed. She recalled a conversation from a year ago. They were sitting on the couch together, watching a documentary about a childless couple traveling the world, their lives filled with adventure and unexpected turns. Elara had unconsciously whispered, "That's a beautiful life, isn't it?" Lucas had looked at her with an incomprehensible gaze, and then gently said, "It's a beautiful life, but not for me. I want to see the roots of my own family grow." At that moment, she should have acknowledged the full truth of their incompatibility. Instead, she had held his hand, rested her head on his shoulder, and changed the subject. She had ignored the red flag, and the red flag had now become the weapon of their breakup. She had to find the courage to acknowledge her own fault and her own cowardice. The pain was not just her loss of Lucas, but also the realization that she had hurt her most beloved person through her own uncertainty and procrastination. The therapist she visited put it very directly. "Elara, you have a healthy desire to be childless, and that is perfectly valid. But you embedded that healthy desire in an unhealthy, dishonest communication strategy. You violated Lucas's right to be aware of the facts that determine his life. You waited until the stakes were highest, and that is why he cannot forgive you. The breakup would have hurt, but the timing has scarred him irreparably. That insight was the beginning of her healing. She had to accept the moral culpability. It had been her responsibility to take the lead in discussing their irreconcilable visions. She was mature enough to make the decision to remain childless, but not mature enough to face the consequences of that decision and tell the man she loved the truth. She began to rebuild her own life with the knowledge that she had learned an expensive lesson. Silence is never neutral. In a relationship, silence is an active force, a lie by omission, which ultimately always overwhelms the truth and is the most dangerous form of deception. She packed up Lucas's belongings, folded his clothes neatly, and left a small, handwritten note in his favorite book, A History of Architecture. Dear Lucas, I know a letter cannot make up for the 4 years of silence, but I want you to know that I understood you. You deserve to be a father. You will be an amazing father, full of structure, love, and wisdom. And you will find a woman who shares that dream with you. It was my inability to be honest that killed our relationship, not the difference in our dreams. I wish you a future as bright and perfect as the sunset we saw that night, but filled with the roots and growth you long for. With eternal regret and love, Elara. She placed the box by the door. It was the last piece of Lucas to leave her home. When she closed the door behind her, she felt a wave of sorrow, but also a strange, hard-won relief. The lie was over. The pain had begun, but it was a clean, honest pain. Years later, she heard through a mutual friend that Lucas was married. His wife was a loving, warm woman who was also an architect and, crucially, wanted to be a mother. They were expecting their first child. The friend hinted that Lucas was happier than she had ever seen him. Elara smiled softly when she heard the news. It still stung, the memory of her own failure. But the pain was mitigated by the knowledge that, in the most difficult and wrong way, she had ultimately done the right thing. She had let him go so he could find his true destiny. The story of Elara and Lucas is not a story about who was right or wrong in their desires. It is a story about the absolute necessity of honesty. It is about the fact that true love does not mean holding on to a man or woman at the expense of their life's dream, but having the courage to let them go, even if it tears your own heart in two. It was about the insoluble paradox of two people who loved each other perfectly, but whose visions of life were so fundamentally exclusive that their relationship could not survive. The hardest lesson for Elara was that the fear of losing a relationship must never be greater than the respect to share the truth. In the architecture of love, foundations are built on truth. If they are missing, the entire structure eventually collapses. She sat in her apartment, the late evening sun casting a warm glow on her face. She picked up an old, framed photograph. It was a picture of her and Lucas on one of their first trips, laughing, their eyes full of the innocent promise of their beginning. She smiled. The love had been real. It just wasn't enough to carry the lie. She put the photo away, not with bitterness, but with gratitude for the lesson and respect for the man she had had to let go. Her future was childless, and his was not, and that was ultimately the only honest conclusion. And so we close the book for tonight. Elara's story is a painfully beautiful reminder that the inability to speak the truth, even if the intention is to protect the other or to hold on to love, always takes its toll. Let us find the courage to be honest about our most fundamental desires, so that the love we share can be built on a strong, unwavering foundation, instead of the loose grains of sand of an unstated secret. May your night be filled with peaceful reflection and the courage to embrace the truth. Sleep softly.